there comes a quiet and almost sacred moment in life. A moment you never schedule. A moment that never announces itself. You wake up one morning with soft sunlight falling across your face, and for the first time in a very long while, you feel lighter. The air does not feel so heavy anymore. The tightness that once lived in your chest has eased. You notice, without drama and without tears, that you did not think about them. You did not replay old arguments. You did not imagine what they might say next. You did not feel the urge to seek their approval. You simply existed. And in that small, silent realization, something massive has shifted. You have started to heal. That is the exact moment a narcissist begins to despise you. The moment you discover joy without them, because your happiness is not just a feeling, it is proof. It is evidence that they have lost the one thing they believed they owned, your mind. Narcissists do not fear your anger. They expect it. They do not fear your sadness. They feed on it. What they truly fear is your peace. Peace cannot be twisted or negotiated. Peace cannot be bought, borrowed, or controlled. When you smile without needing permission, when your laughter becomes real again, they sense it like a predator realizing its prey has grown wings. Imagine them observing you from a distance, not always physically, but mentally. They notice that you move differently now. You speak differently. Your voice no longer bends under the pressure of their presence. You are no longer explaining yourself. You are no longer walking on emotional eggshells to keep them comfortable. You are no longer dimming your light to make them feel superior. That is when it hits them. The balance of power has changed. Your happiness becomes a mirror they cannot tolerate because it reflects everything they have spent their life avoiding: their emptiness, their insecurity, their lack of authenticity. You found joy from within, and that is something they cannot copy. They can imitate charm, intelligence, even kindness, but they cannot recreate peace. Peace comes from a soul that has made peace with itself, and that is something the narcissist has never done. The irony is that your happiness was never meant to hurt anyone. You did not heal to prove a point. You did not grow confidence to make them jealous. You simply refused to stay broken. You chose yourself again and again until you became whole. But to a narcissist, your wholeness feels like betrayal because they built their identity around being the center of your world. When they are no longer the source of your validation, your laughter, or your motivation, they no longer exist in the story they once controlled. So when they see you smiling freely and genuinely, it is not only your happiness they resent, it is what your happiness represents: freedom. Freedom from their story, their emotional cage, their psychological grip. It is the moment they realize the game has ended, and for the first time, you are no longer playing. A narcissist's hatred for your happiness is not rooted in simple jealousy, it is rooted in exposure. Your joy shines light into the darkest corners of their inner world, corners they have spent their entire life hiding. They built a fragile sense of self on illusion, manipulation, and control. The moment you smile again without needing their approval, that illusion begins to crack. Your happiness reveals a truth they fought hard to deny. They never truly had power over you, only the illusion of it. Narcissists survive on emotional dependence. They design relationships where your self-worth is tied to their opinion. They give affection when it benefits them, and withdraw it when it does not, training you to chase approval that never lasts. In that psychological loop, your sadness becomes their comfort. Your confusion becomes their leverage. Every time you doubt your value, they feel safe, because as long as you look to them for validation, they remain the center of your emotional universe. When you heal, when you begin to validate yourself, when your worth no longer depends on their recognition, they lose control. Your independence becomes a mirror that reflects everything they are not. That is unbearable to them, because beneath the arrogance and superiority lies a hollow and insecure identity. Narcissists crave admiration the way others crave air. When you stop providing it, they begin to suffocate. They do not hate your happiness because they want you miserable for its own sake. They hate it because your happiness proves their influence is gone. It marks the end of their illusion of control. When they see you thriving and loving yourself again, it destroys the fantasy that you would never move on, that you would always need them to define your value. Your joy disarms them in a way anger never could. Darkness is not defeated by fighting it, but by shining light. And your peace, your confidence, your calm presence becomes that light. What makes this dynamic so fascinating is that narcissists do not understand happiness the way emotionally healthy people do. To them, happiness is not something to share or experience. It is a scoreboard. If someone else is happy, it means they are losing. If someone else is growing, it means they are falling behind. Their minds are wired for comparison and competition, not connection. So when you begin to live in joy, they interpret it as betrayal. They believe your happiness was taken from them, that you are happy at them, not without them. That is why they attempt to disrupt your peace even after you have walked away. They may suddenly reappear, pretending to have changed, or send subtle reminders of the past, hoping to pull you back into emotional dependence. They say things that sound caring, but carry guilt and manipulation. I just hope you are happy now. You have really changed. I guess you do not need me anymore. These are not apologies, they are tests. They want to know if they still live in your mind. When you respond with calm, with grace, or with quiet indifference, the truth becomes clear. They have lost control. That realization terrifies them, because if you no longer seek their approval or need to prove your worth, their entire psychological structure collapses. The stage they once dominated is now empty, and they are left alone with themselves, something they have avoided their whole life. They hate your happiness because it forces them to face the one truth they cannot manipulate. They were never the source of your light. They were only the shadow blocking it. Your healing exposes them. It reveals that everything they projected onto you, weakness, dependence, insecurity, was never truly yours. It belonged to them. You were simply carrying what they could not face. When you finally put it down, they are forced to carry their own pain for the first time. That is why your joy feels cruel to them, not because your happiness hurts them directly, but because it reminds them that peace was always possible, and they chose control instead. Your happiness is not revenge, it is revelation. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need to display success. You do not even need to look back. Your peace speaks louder than confrontation ever could. The moment a narcissist sees you smiling, untouched by their chaos, is the moment they realize you were never theirs to break. You were always meant to rise. Another truth behind why narcissists hate seeing you happy is that your confidence threatens the foundation of their false superiority. Narcissists live inside a fragile hierarchy. Someone must always be beneath them for them to feel important. Their sense of self does not come from inner worth, but from comparison. They only know who they are by knowing who they are above. For a long time, that person was you. You were the mirror they used to see themselves as powerful, intelligent, or dominant. When you stop reflecting their importance and begin standing on your own, that mirror disappears, and so does their illusion of greatness. Your confidence may represent growth and healing to you, but to them it feels like danger. When you speak with certainty, when your voice no longer shakes, when your eyes stop searching for approval, they see it as rebellion. It is not just that you changed, it is that you escaped. You walked out of the psychological prison they built. Now they shout at walls, trying to regain control over a space that no longer exists. In their world, control is survival. Without it, they feel lost. When you were unsure they could define you, When you doubted yourself, they could guide you in ways that kept you small. But when you believe in yourself, you become unpredictable. They cannot manipulate what they cannot control. Confidence disrupts their power. They can no longer play the savior, the critic, or the superior. When you no longer need validation or approval, your confidence becomes a mirror that does not flatter them. It reflects their lack. For the first time, they are confronted with what they never became. That is why they label your confidence as arrogance, your self-love as selfishness, your boundaries as cruelty. They must devalue what they cannot dominate. It is their only defense against the truth that you have outgrown them. This is why they respond to your growth with mockery, silence, or withdrawal. They may act indifferent, as if your success does not matter, but it does. Inside, they are unraveling. Your stability exposes their chaos. Your growth dismantles their illusion. In their mind, your role was never meant to be equal. You were meant to orbit them, reflecting their importance back to them. But now you have become your own sun. You no longer revolve around anyone. You generate your own light. That destroys their sense of dominance. Narcissists can only function where they are the center of gravity. They manipulate emotions and conversations so energy flows toward them. That energy stops when your attention turns inward, toward your life and your peace. Without someone to control, they feel invisible. Without someone to dominate, they feel powerless. Confidence also exposes their emotional emptiness. It proves your independence. It shows you can think, feel, and decide without them. That shatters the illusion that they gave you meaning. Narcissists fear irrelevance, and your strength makes them irrelevant. They often try to undermine your growth by criticizing or playing the victim. They say you have become cold, or that you think you are better than others. These are strategies meant to pull you back into guilt and self-doubt. True confidence does not argue, it stands quietly. When your self-assurance becomes calm and grounded, you become unreachable. You stop needing them to understand you. You stop justifying your healing. And in that silence, they see they no longer have access to your mind. The door is locked from the inside. Your confidence is not performance. It is transformation. It is not about proving you moved on. It is about embodying peace they could never give. It is a quiet revolution within you. That is why they hate it. Because deep down they know they could have chosen growth too, but they chose control, and freedom terrifies those who survive on domination. The final truth is that narcissists hate seeing you happy because it exposes the emptiness of their emotional world. They pretend to feel deeply, to love intensely, to care passionately, but beneath the act is a void. They imitate emotion without truly experiencing it. Empathy is selective. Affection is conditional. Joy is transactional. When you experience real happiness, the kind that comes from healing, it highlights what they lack. Authentic joy reveals their counterfeit nature. They believe control equals safety. They control to avoid abandonment and exposure. True happiness cannot be controlled. It is free and spontaneous. When they see that in you, they are reminded of the freedom they will never know. They can fake excitement, but not stillness. They can act confident, but not grounded. When you radiate calm joy, they feel discomfort because your peace comes from authenticity. Narcissists hate authenticity because it reminds them their life is a performance. They wear masks to hide shame and fragility. Masks cannot feel. They can only copy. Seeing someone truly alive feels like watching color after a lifetime of gray. It is awe mixed with resentment. Your happiness proves their beliefs about you were wrong. You were never weak or dependent. Power was never dominance. It was emotional truth. When you stop reacting, stop defending, and stop explaining, they lose access to your energy. Your attention was their fuel. When it ends, they face emptiness. Their hatred is grief disguised as rage. They mourn control they will never regain. They may mock your joy or call it fake, but that is projection. Pretending is their world, not yours. They test your peace hoping to shake it. When you remain calm, they face the truth. Your happiness is real, and no matter how they twist the story, they cannot take that away. Your joy becomes a symbol of everything they could have become if they had chosen honesty instead of ego. But they did not. And now, every time they see you smiling, they are reminded that love, peace, and confidence are not things you take from others. They are things you build inside yourself. That is the paradox of your healing. What enrages them is the very thing that releases you. Your laughter, your calm presence, your quiet self-assurance. The things they once dismissed or mocked have become living proof of your freedom. They hate it because they cannot control it, they cannot possess it, and most painful of all, they cannot feel it. Your happiness becomes both your victory and their exposure. While they are still performing their role in life, you have finally started to live it. Another truth is that narcissists hate seeing you happy and confident because it destroys the story they created about you. They exist inside carefully written narratives where they are always the hero, the victim, or the one in charge. Everyone around them becomes a character meant to serve their ego. You were once placed into that script as well, perhaps as the admirer, the fixer, the one who needed guidance, or the one who was never quite enough. These roles allowed them to maintain control. But when you rise beyond that role, when you redefine yourself as strong, peaceful, and free, you do not just exit their story, you tear it apart completely. For a narcissist, control of the narrative is everything. They twist perception, reshape memories, and rewrite events to justify themselves. They depend on defining how others see you, and even more importantly, how you see yourself. That is why your happiness threatens them so deeply. Happiness is evidence. It proves that their version of you was false. They told you that you were too sensitive, too unstable, too emotional, too weak to stand alone. But your calm joy contradicts all of it. You become living proof that their illusion was never real. And for a narcissist, being exposed as wrong is unbearable. They will go to extreme lengths to protect their fragile self-image. Gaslighting, guilt, or even spreading lies about you to others. Anything to preserve the story they rely on. Because if you are no longer broken, they can no longer be the savior. If you are no longer dependent, they are no longer superior. Your growth removes the foundation of their identity. They do not just lose control over you. They lose control over who they believe themselves to be. Your happiness dismantles their fantasy of importance. It reveals that you never needed their approval to heal, and that their influence was never as powerful as they imagined. This forces them to face a truth they have spent their lives avoiding. They do not define reality, not yours, not anyone else's. For someone whose psychological survival depends on controlling the narrative, that realization is devastating. It feels like an internal collapse, a breakdown of the illusion they lived inside. That is why they often try to return after you have healed, not because they miss you, but because they are desperate to reclaim the story. They may come back with apologies or memories, hoping to pull you back into the old dynamic. They say things like, "You have changed," or "You are not the person they knew." What they really mean is that you are no longer playing your assigned role. They want the old version of you back, the one who explained, apologized, and sought approval. But when you remain calm, when you no longer react emotionally, the story stops working. The narcissist becomes a character without a stage. There is something deeply symbolic about that moment. It is where illusion collides with truth, where performance meets authenticity. Narcissists rely on others to hold their identity together. You rely on truth to hold yours. They live in fiction. you live in reality. So when your happiness grows from self-awareness, it becomes more than healing. It becomes rebellion against falsehood. It is you rewriting your life in your own voice. And that terrifies them, because once you take control of your story, they can never manipulate it again. The most painful wound for a narcissist is not rejection. It is irrelevance. Rejection still acknowledges them. Irrelevance erases them. When you move forward with confidence and no longer try to prove anything, they fade from your world. They go from being the author of your emotional reality to a forgotten footnote. That quiet indifference cuts deeper than confrontation ever could. Your happiness does more than end their control. It reveals the truth about love itself. You begin to understand that love was never meant to feel like walking on glass. It was never meant to be earned through sacrifice or maintained through fear. Love is meant to feel safe, peaceful. Narcissists hate your happiness because it represents a kind of peace they cannot create, a peace built on authenticity, not dominance. And the more they see you thriving, the harder it becomes to escape that truth.